Paul. How are you doing?
Michael, I am great. I'm actually looking forward to this conversation because you're one of the first, this is actually the first time I've shown a video as an exhibition piece. And so it's like a whole new realm, a new experience for me. So I'm glad to be talking about it.
Great. Well, I mean, just to give everyone else a background, you are a current artist in residency with PRMX in our virtual residency program, and you had planned to be here for our Verano de Queer, the Summer of Queer, in June, which was to accumulate in the exhibition that's currently on our seat because of the COVID nightmare that we're all living through. So I've had many interactions with you over the last several months and gotten to know your work and everything. And one of the most fascinating aspects of your work to me is the sort of layering of all the different processes and the thinking behind them. And I've watched things evolve as well and change over time too. So I'm excited to talk to you about your pieces, Indigo, the series, which is in the Existimos show, and hear more about that particular piece and your process and how it came out to be. And also, you know, curious about the concept of queer as an identifier in artwork and how that plays into your work or how it doesn't play into your work, or, you know, what the position for you on that is. I know that can be somewhat controversial and we all have different perspectives on that. So can you maybe start off by telling me the story of what Indigo is about for you?
Indigo is really something that came about because of the pandemic isolation, being in the house, not going out. And suddenly I was getting more aware of my surroundings and what was going on. And there's two parts to it. Being at home meant I wasn't going to my painting studio. So I had limited resources here. I had photographs, I had my computer, I had my video camera, my digital camera, my cell phone. So everything was about technology. And then being at home, you start getting sensitive to what's going on around you. And Indigo started because it was a sunny afternoon and the light was just playing through the windows. And I never noticed how the blue curtains and the light coming through and the shadows outside, because it was really windy, what this was doing. And I just decided to get my camera out and shoot it, take some still photos, and then it's like, well, let's take some video as well. And over the course of, I don't know, a week of gathering information, suddenly something started to click. It's like I could actually make something out of this. I've pondered this before, but I never dedicated time to it. So let's see what this means. And it started to grow. I started using still photos from maybe a year or two ago that I took of other projects with this idea of blue, of indigo being the thread that ran through the whole thing. As a musician, performance artist, noisemaker, I have a lot of recordings of past performances that I used strictly as a record of time, a record that this happened, but I never used them. So suddenly it made sense to look at that because it's sitting in my computer stored away, and make this indigo idea become something complete.
And the process of doing this, like, because what you're saying is like typically you're in a studio and I know this, you're working with mylar and other different materials, and you're painting and they're very tactile. What was the experience of removing all those objects and textural items and things from the work, and how did that feel for you?
Yeah, well, very different, because for many, many years, I've resisted doing anything digitally, doing anything on my computer. But now it's like given the choice of doing nothing or diving in and exploring this, it's like, do it. Let's just do this. And a lot of the still images I used for Indigo were photographs of the Mylar paintings from a few years ago. I did a whole series called the Penetrations, because I would hang the Mylar on my window in the morning, and the sun would come through it, which would alter the entire look of what it was. And then to photograph that then led to a whole other manipulation that had removed the idea of it being a painting and being something independent. So it's the vocabulary and the actions have been there. They just never really implemented them until being locked in the house.
So the context of the quarantine actually created an opportunity for you.
Exactly. And it's really opened up my eyes to the other possibilities. It's like the computer isn't necessarily an enemy. It could be a friend. We can form an alliance and make something new happen. So that's a good thing.
You say that now, but we'll talk in 20 years when AI is taken over and we're.
But that's kind of fascinating too now, who knows, but.
So in the process of creating your video piece, can you talk to me about the music choice? Is it your music? How did you decide what to put with it? And what did it feel like to bring that together in that digital form for you?
The music took a little while to figure out, because the video was very organic and very natural, and I didn't want to create something that was just playing with that and being sentimental about that. So I was going through my cache of sounds and music, and a performance I did in Kentucky a few years ago, it was called Membrane. And me and a friend, my sound partner, Todd Birdsong, we used a small storefront and used electronic transceivers on the glass, making those amplifiers. So Todd and I were inside the storefront, and the public were on the sidewalk outside, because that's where you could hear the music. The sound was through the windows. They became amplifiers. So I was doing my normal thing with cymbals, and I had this huge industrial spring. I'm like the physical guy making these sounds. And Todd had his computer set up and was creating these very almost sci-fi kind of sounds. And it seemed to make sense with this organic, very natural flow of light and blue to suddenly bring in something a little more computerized sci-fi to play off of that, to bring a richer experience to it. So.
Well, also it's kind of, it feels like we're living in a time of science fiction as well, right? So
exactly.
The soundtrack to that makes total sense.
Exactly. It's like, where does this stimuli come from? What is the impetus for this? And, we're all very sensitive to our beings right now. So maybe that played into it. It's like, it made sense. It made perfect sense.
What is it in terms of the project Indigo, the series of the images, the video and everything? What is it that you want the viewers to experience and to take away from that? Like, is there a set goal for you, or like, how do you relate to your audience?
Yeah, in general, I don't relate to my audience very well.
Well, the problem would be if your audience doesn't relate back to you, but we know that's not true. So, I mean, you must get feedback from your audience then as well. And does that affect your, the next thing that you work on, or how does that?
In a way, Indigo is really kind of a mood piece, and it's about imagination. It's like giving people this 9 minutes that they're not in their real world, and you can fully engage in the visual and the sound and be in that environment, or just have it on the periphery that you have a quiet relationship with it. But it's taking you someplace else without being too bold or too pushy or anything that's forcing the viewer to really react strongly. I just wanted it to be this atmosphere. You come into it, and after the 9 minutes, you can leave it. You can watch it again. Who knows? But it's really about the atmosphere. It's about creating, something new for me. To do a video like this and coordinating sound, it's completely out of my comfort zone. It's something I've played with, but never dedicated myself to make something final. This is going to be something I'm going to let out into the world. And that's been really cool.
It's not hard to make a connection between your experiences in architecture and the work you do, because you do have a language that you're working with. Like, if I look beyond Indigo to things before and things that I've seen you produce in the residency during your time in there too, I do see that like sense of awareness about space and form and how these elements play together. And I could imagine you doing a full installation with the concept of just Indigo as well. Like, I could totally picture that. Like,
that would be so cool to find the right space, the right physical parameters to kind of wrap the blue around you and have the sound where you can immerse yourself in it and stay there if you want. That suddenly becomes a safe place, a sanctuary, a place of respite. Why not?
Well, I do find that there's a sort of meditative quality to the piece and some of the other pieces that I've seen. And you do have a very robust YouTube channel. What is your YouTube channel handle?
Honestly, I don't know.
I think it's Paul Lorenz. If I'll put it into the video. Yeah, I think that
it is just my name. But yeah, if you go to YouTube and plug in Paul Lorenz, you're going to get a lot of Paul Lorenzes. There's a ballroom dancer, there's a downhill skier, and I'm neither of those, so I'm the third one.
I'm not so certain, but that's a really good segue into the idea of we had a conversation about Existimos and We Exist, and the idea that it's a queer artist show, and about this sort of juxtaposition in your own outward identity and the word queer, and this question about, do you qualify as a queer artist, or so I'm kind of curious about like what the experience has been like for you, and like the retrospectively now that the show has been up for a couple of months, and if any new thoughts have come to mind for you.
Well, it's been interesting personally, because my entire career as an artist, I've always kind of removed myself from the work. The work has to stand on its own, whether it's a painting or a drawing or a music piece. It's not about me, it's about the medium, and I'm just a facilitator. I'm just the one in between the
You're
idea. Yeah, that's who I am. But for some reason, in 2020, everything I've been involved in has a gay, queer focus to it. And the more I'm getting involved means I'm involved. I can't just be the conduit any longer. I have to put something of myself into this.
Well, I think there's a sense of vulnerability in putting yourself into putting yourself maybe in front of a piece of work, physically or metaphorically, by putting some element of yourself in front of a piece of work. So there's a little bit of a risk taking involved in that as well.
Exactly, and I've always avoided that. And then suddenly now I've had, there's Existimos, there's the exhibition Exposed. I've got images being published in September in a magazine, and it's all about gay and queer identity. So it's making me wonder about the choices I'm making. How much of myself do I want to put in the work, whether it's something representational or something abstract. And I suppose I have been putting myself more into them because I don't mind using myself as a subject for a lot of work.
Is it possible to remove yourself from your work? Like when I see your work, I see so much of you, I think because I've had experiences with you already, but I do see so much of you in the work. But the way that you're talking about it is like as if you were off to the side and that it's not attached to you.
Well, I don't know what I think about this actually.
Well, it's a pretty complex ideal. I mean, but also in the context of quarantine, here you're in this situation where you're kind of isolated from the rest of the world, and then these are the things, coming in from the outside that people are sort of picking you out for. They're putting you into a context that you maybe hadn't considered before.
Exactly, and even with the digital work I do, I've used a lot of old photographs, older photographs. But once, you kind of get over that, it's like, I want new things. Well, I'm isolated in my house. What else can I do? Right. And frankly, my shower has become a sanctuary of a lot of things because the acoustics are really good. I do some interesting recording in there, and it's all white, so it's also a good place to photograph myself in it. So that this space has become kind of the getaway place within the isolation is this room. And then suddenly because it is all white, it's a white cube, there's no real forces being influenced on it. That's another form of abstraction that seems to feed into a lot of the work also. That there's, even though it's a photo of me, it's in a removed situation that I am putting into a collage of digital things that are from my past, of a vacation, of a line drawing or something. There's a tight vocabulary that I use, and if you know me and know of my work, it seems very clear and very obvious. But then to others coming in, maybe it won't be so. I don't know. It's trying to predict these things. I just follow my gut and say, this is what I'm going to do, and run with it.
Well, it's one of the things I appreciate about your work and your processes. There is a lot of flexibility and experimentation in there, and you've clearly put a lot of energy into developing a language that you can speak with and project forward. There's consistencies in your work that I see throughout time, but also there's this new energy, and every next thing that you put out has a new energy to it and a willingness to kind of push the boundaries of it, which leads me to like, what's next, Paul? Like, what are you going to do now? Like, now that you've conquered the queer mountain?
Well, don't know if I would quite go that far.
I know.
But there's a lot of room to think about imagery and process. I'm getting, as the visual things kind of come to one kind of reality. Now the music and composition is coming in from the back. I've been in contact with a lot of musician friends over the past week, and kind of the juices are kind of flowing to see where that leads to next. And I'm right now in a bidding war for a flute on eBay. So I can't wait to play a flute in my shower to see to hear what that does. And then me with my camera photographing myself playing a flute in the shower.
Well, that's an endless amount of possibilities right there. I mean,
exactly. There are so many things that can happen, and as odd as this isolation has been, it has allowed these ideas and these opportunities to actually happen. So if I was just going to my studio and painting, I wouldn't have had the time to do these things, and I don't know if I would have. So, time and life are very sensitive, and you've got to just be aware of the present and be in it. So I'm taking full advantage. Basically, I'm still in isolation. I mean, Arizona is still like a COVID hotspot, so I'm not going out that much. I'm not doing all that much. So
yeah, it's the same here. I mean, we do expect to have the show in October, the physical show, but it'll be a socially distanced show, of course, private viewings and things like that and everything too. So it's nothing is going to, I think it's not going to return to normal for a little while longer. I don't want to say how long, because I'm always surprised. I thought after a few months we would be more or less back to some sort of normality, but here we are.
Exactly. So we work within our new parameters, and we make things happen and figure them out, the validity and the future of them later, but just be in the present and make things happen.
Well, I do look forward to the time when you do actually get to come and be here in the residency and work on a project. I know we'd had lots of conversations about different ideas and things, but I can only imagine by the time it actually happens, what kind of experimentation will come out of it and what we'll see from it. I so appreciate your time today, taking the time to come and meet with us and give us a little insight into what you produced for the show Existimos. And soon we'll have it up on a wall and people will be able to visit it and see your video, and I'll attach your video to the end of this interview as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. This has been really an extraordinary time. I wish I could have been in Mexico City for June, and there's just so much that needs and can happen. And I'm looking forward to getting to Mexico City as soon as I can.
Well, I think we'll be here, so don't worry about that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.